The November rain hammered against the cracked windows of the abandoned warehouse on Detroit's east side, each drop a relentless reminder that winter was coming early this year. 14-year-old Marcus Williams pressed himself deeper into the corner where two concrete walls met, pulling his threadbare jacket tighter around his thin frame. The fabric was soaked through, offering no real protection against the cold that seemed to seep up from the very ground beneath him. It had been 3 weeks since he'd run away from his fourth foster home in 2 years. 3 weeks of sleeping in doorways, dumpster diving for food, and constantly moving to avoid the police patrols that would send him back into the system. Marcus had learned the hard way that not all foster families were created equal, and the last one, with Mr. Henderson's heavy hands and Mrs. Henderson's deliberate blindness, had been the final straw. "Better out here," Marcus muttered to himself, his breath forming small clouds in the frigid air. "At least out here, nobody pretends to care." The warehouse had been his shelter for the past 2 nights. It wasn't much. Broken glass littered the floor. Graffiti covered every available surface, and the smell of mildew and decay was overwhelming. But it had a partially intact roof and walls that blocked most of the wind. In Marcus's current situation, that qualified as luxury. As thunder rolled across the darkening sky, Marcus heard something that made him freeze. It wasn't the usual sounds of the city, the distant sirens, the rumble of traffic on the I-94, or the occasional shouts from the homeless encampment 3 blocks away. This was different, weaker, more desperate, a whimper. Marcus's first instinct was to ignore it. The streets had taught him that getting involved in other people's problems was a good way to create your own. But the sound came again, longer this time, followed by a weak scratching noise that seemed to be coming from the far end of the warehouse. Probably just rats, he told himself. But his curiosity was already winning the internal battle. Using his phone's dying flashlight, he'd been carefully rationing the last 8% of battery for 3 days. Marcus picked his way across the debris-strewn floor. The scratching grew louder, more insistent. As he rounded a collapsed section of shelving, his light fell upon a sight that made his heart clench. 3 German shepherds lay in various states of distress near what looked like an old loading dock. Even in the dim light, Marcus could see their ribs protruding through matted, filthy fur. The largest of the 3, a male with a torn ear, lifted his head weakly when the light hit him. His eyes were clouded with pain and exhaustion, but there was still something there, a spark of intelligence, of awareness. "Oh, man," Marcus breathed, taking a cautious step closer. "What happened to you guys?" The other 2 dogs, both females, Marcus thought, barely moved at his approach. One had a nasty gash on her front leg that looked infected, the wound oozing and surrounded by swollen tissue. The other was trembling violently, her breathing rapid and shallow. Marcus knew he should walk away. He could barely take care of himself. What could he possibly do for 3 dying dogs? But as he stood there, staring into the male dog's pleading eyes, something shifted inside him. Maybe it was recognition. Maybe it was just that these dogs were as abandoned and desperate as he was. "You guys got left behind too, huh?" Marcus crouched down, staying just out of reach in case they became aggressive, but none of the dogs showed any signs of hostility. The male simply watched him with those clouded eyes, while the injured female let out another pitiful whimper. Marcus made a decision that would change everything. "Okay," he said softly, more to himself than to the dogs. "Okay, we're going to figure this out." He spent the next hour exploring the warehouse with renewed purpose, his own discomfort temporarily forgotten. In a corner office that had somehow escaped the worst of the vandalism, he found some old packing blankets that were relatively dry. In another area, he discovered a plastic tarp that could be used to catch rainwater. Moving carefully, Marcus dragged the blankets over to the dogs. The male growled softly when Marcus approached, a weak sound that held more warning than threat. "Easy, boy," Marcus murmured, extending his hand slowly, palm down. "I'm trying to help." For a long moment the dog just stared at him. Then, with what seemed like tremendous effort, he sniffed Marcus's hand. His tail moved slightly, Not quite a wag, but an acknowledgement. Marcus carefully draped a blanket over each dog, tucking the fabric around their thin bodies. The trembling female seemed to relax slightly under the covering, her rapid breathing slowing just a fraction. "That's something at least," Marcus said, sitting back on his heels. His stomach growled loudly, reminding him that he hadn't eaten since finding half a sandwich in a trash can yesterday morning. He had $4.37 in his pocket, money he'd been saving for food. But looking at these dogs, seeing their desperate condition, he knew what he had to do. Outside, the storm intensified, rain now coming down in sheets that turned the streets into rivers. Marcus pulled his hood up and headed for the door, casting one last glance back at the three dogs. "Hold on," he told them. "I'll be back." As he stepped out into the deluge, Marcus Williams had no idea that his act of compassion was about to set off a chain of events that would transform not only his life, but the lives of everyone around him. The convenience store 3 blocks from the warehouse was a familiar landmark to Marcus, a bright beacon in the decaying neighborhood, its fluorescent lights visible even through the torrential rain. He'd shoplifted from it twice in his first week on the streets, before the guilt became too heavy to bear. Now he only went there when he had actual money to spend. The bell above the door chimed as Marcus entered, dripping water across the worn linoleum floor. Mr. Patel, the elderly owner, looked up from behind the counter where he'd been watching a small television. His expression shifted from wary to concerned when he recognized the soaked teenager. "Marcus," Mr. Patel said, his slight Indian accent making the name sound gentler somehow. "You are wet like drowned rat. You should be home, not out in this storm." Marcus didn't correct him about having a home. Mr. Patel was one of the few store owners who hadn't banned him, who treated him with a basic human dignity that Marcus had learned to appreciate. He didn't want to complicate their simple, transactional relationship with the messy truth of his situation. "I need to buy some stuff," Marcus said, approaching the counter and pulling out his crumpled bills and handful of change. Of course," Mr. Patel gestured toward the aisles. "But please, take this first." He handed Marcus a small hand towel from beneath the counter. "Dry your face, at least." The simple kindness of the gesture made Marcus's throat tighten. He accepted the towel with a mumbled thanks and pressed it against his face, buying himself a moment to regain his composure. Marcus had already done the math in his head on the walk over. With $4.37, he couldn't buy much. The cheapest dog food, a small can of store brand, cost $1.29. 3 cans would be $3.87, leaving him 50 cents. Not even enough for a pack of crackers for himself. He stood in the pet supply aisle, staring at the cans, his stomach cramping with hunger. The rational part of his brain screamed at him to forget the dogs, to buy himself a couple of instant ramen packages and a candy bar. He could survive another day. He'd done it before. But then he thought of the male dog's clouded eyes, of the injured female's infected wound, of the trembling dog who'd seemed to calm slightly under the blanket. They were dying. Without food, without help, they wouldn't last another 2 days. Marcus grabbed 3 cans of dog food. At the counter, as Mr. Patel rang up his purchase, Marcus noticed a display of travel-size first aid kits near the register. They were $3.99 each, more than he could afford. But the image of that infected wound flashed through his mind. "Something else?" Mr. Patel asked, following Marcus's gaze. "No, sir. Just the dog food, Mr." Patel studied him for a long moment, his brown eyes sharp and assessing. "You have a dog now?" Marcus hesitated. Lying would be easier, but something about Mr. Patel's gentle demeanor made him want to tell the truth. "Kind of. I found 3 dogs. They're in bad shape, real bad." 3 dogs, Mr. Patel's eyebrows rose. "That is expensive responsibility." "Yeah." Marcus handed over his money. "I know." As Mr. Patel counted out the change, exactly 50 cents. He seemed to be thinking about something. Finally, he said, "Wait 1 moment, please." He disappeared into the back room, leaving Marcus standing awkwardly by the counter, clutching his plastic bag of dog food. When Mr. Patel returned, he was carrying one of the first aid kits and a larger can of dog food. "This one is better quality," Mr. Patel said, placing them on the counter. "More nutrition, and dogs, if they are hurt, they need medical attention." "I can't afford," Marcus started, but Mr. Patel waved him off. "Consider it a loan. When you get job, when things are better, you pay me back. Until then, you take care of these dogs." He paused, then added more softly, "And you take care of yourself, yes?" Marcus felt his eyes burning. He blinked hard, refusing to cry in front of this kind man. "Why?" he managed to ask. Mr. Patel smiled sadly. "I had son once. He would be about your age now. The old man's voice faltered. "He is gone many years, but I see him sometimes, in boys like you, boys who need help but are too proud to ask for it." He pushed the items across the counter. "Take them, help those dogs, and maybe you come back tomorrow. Tell me how they're doing." Marcus nodded, not trusting himself to speak. He gathered the supplies carefully, as if they were made of glass. "And Marcus," Mr. Patel called as the boy headed for the door, "there is youth shelter on Gratiot Avenue. Safe place, hot meals. They don't ask too many questions. You should go there." "Thanks, Mr. Patel," Marcus said quietly, "for everything." The rain had eased to a steady drizzle as Marcus made his way back to the warehouse, his precious supplies tucked carefully inside his jacket to keep them dry. His stomach still growled with hunger, but there was something else there now too. A small, fragile feeling he barely recognized. Hope. As he pushed through the damaged door of the warehouse, Marcus heard the dogs stirring. The male gave a soft bark, weak but alert. They'd waited for him. They'd known he'd come back. "I got food," Marcus announced softly, kneeling beside them. "And medicine. We're gonna get you guys fixed up." In the darkness of that abandoned warehouse, as a homeless teenager carefully opened cans of dog food for 3 dying German shepherds, something remarkable began to happen. Not a miracle. Miracles weren't real, Marcus knew that. But something important nonetheless. Someone who had nothing chose to give everything he had to those who needed it more. The male German shepherd, Marcus had started calling him Duke in his mind, ate slowly but steadily, his tail managing a weak wag with each bite Marcus offered him on an old piece of cardboard he'd found. The food seemed to bring a bit of light back to those clouded eyes, and Duke's breathing became less labored as his empty stomach finally received nourishment. The 2 females were another story entirely. The injured one, who Marcus called Lady because of her gentler features, could barely lift her head. Her infected wound looked worse up close, angry red streaks radiating from the gash that suggested the infection was spreading. She licked weakly at the food Marcus placed near her mouth, but couldn't manage more than a few bites before her head dropped back down with exhaustion. The trembling female, Scout, Marcus decided. Because of the alert intelligence still visible in her eyes despite her condition, refused to eat at all. She just shook continuously, her breathing rapid and shallow, her body temperature seeming both too hot and too cold at the same time. "Come on, girl," Marcus coaxed gently, holding a small portion of food near Scout's nose. "You gotta eat something." But Scout just whimpered and turned her head away. Marcus sat back, frustration and worry warring inside him. He knew enough about survival to recognize that Scout was in serious trouble. Fever, probably dehydration, maybe pneumonia. Without real medical care, she might not make it through the night. And Lady's infection needed antibiotics, not just the basic first aid supplies Mr. Patel had given him. "Okay," Marcus said aloud, trying to organize his thoughts. "Okay. Let's deal with what we can deal with." Using the first aid kit, Marcus carefully cleaned Lady's wound with antiseptic wipes. She whined and tried to pull away, but Duke, lying nearby, made a soft sound that seemed to calm her. It was remarkable. Even in their desperate state, these dogs clearly had a bond, a pack mentality that made them aware of and responsive to each other. "Good girl, Lady," Marcus murmured as he worked, his hands surprisingly steady despite his lack of experience. "I know it hurts, but we gotta clean it." He applied antibiotic ointment from the kit and wrapped the wound as best he could with gauze and medical tape. It wasn't professional work by any means, but it was something. Better than nothing, Scout was a different challenge. Marcus tried to get her to drink water from his cupped hand, but she couldn't or wouldn't. Finally, in desperation, he dipped his fingers in the rainwater he'd collected in the tarp and let drops fall onto her tongue. It was painstaking work, but after 20 minutes, he thought maybe she'd gotten a few ounces down. "You guys need a real vet," Marcus said, settling back against the wall. Duke had crawled closer during the past hour, now lying with his head near Marcus's leg. "And I need about $1,000 I don't have." He pulled out his phone, down to 5% battery now, and stared at the dark screen. He could call 911, report 3 sick dogs. Animal control would come. They'd take the dogs to a shelter, get them medical care. It was the smart thing to do, the responsible thing. But Marcus had been in the system long enough to know how overwhelmed it always was, how resources were always stretched too thin. Would they put resources into 3 sick German shepherds, or would they— Marcus's stomach churned at the thought— decide the most humane option was euthanasia? "No," Marcus said firmly, and Duke's ears perked up at the tone. "We're not giving up. Not yet." As if in response, Duke shifted closer, resting his head fully on Marcus's lap now. The weight was comforting, grounding. Marcus carefully placed his hand on the dog's head, feeling the coarse fur, the warmth of the living creature beneath. "You've been through something bad, haven't you, boy?" Marcus said softly. "All 3 of you. Somebody hurt you, left you here to die." Duke's tail moved slightly, as if acknowledging the truth of the words. "Yeah, well, I get it." Marcus felt the familiar tightness in his chest. The anger and hurt he usually kept buried deep. People leave. That's what they do. That's all they know how to do. The words hung in the cold air of the warehouse. Outside, the rain had stopped completely, and through a broken window, Marcus could see stars beginning to appear between the breaking clouds. It was going to be a cold night. Marcus knew he should sleep. His body was exhausted, running on fumes and adrenaline. But every time he started to drift off, Scout's labored breathing would jerk him back to alertness. He kept watch over the 3 dogs through the long night, occasionally offering water, adjusting blankets, speaking soft words of encouragement that probably mattered more to him than to them. Somewhere around 3 in the morning, Marcus made a decision. Tomorrow he would go to that youth shelter Mr. Patel had mentioned. Not for himself. He'd managed 3 weeks on his own. He could manage more. But the shelter would have resources, connections. Maybe someone there would know about low-cost veterinary clinics or rescue organizations that could help. It meant risking exposure, risking questions about where he'd been and why he wasn't in school. It meant possibly being sent back to foster care, back to the system he'd fought so hard to escape. But as Marcus looked at Duke, at Lady with her bandaged leg, at Scout fighting for every breath, he realized something fundamental had shifted inside him. For the first time in longer than he could remember, Marcus had something more important than his own survival to worry about. He had someone, 3 someones, depending on him. "We're gonna make it," Marcus whispered into the darkness, believing it and doubting it in equal measure. "All of us. We're gonna make it through." Duke's tail wagged once, twice, as if sealing the promise. Morning came slowly to the warehouse, grey light filtering through the broken windows and illuminating the dust particles that danced in the air. Marcus woke with a start, his neck cramped from sleeping, sitting up against the concrete wall. For a moment, he panicked, thinking he'd overslept and missed something important. Then reality settled back in. There was nowhere he needed to be, no one waiting for him, except the dogs. Scout was still breathing, though her condition hadn't improved. Lady was awake, watching Marcus with dark, intelligent eyes that seemed to hold both pain and gratitude. Duke had somehow managed to stand during the night and had repositioned himself between Marcus and the 2 females, a protective guardian even in his weakened state. "Morning, guys," Marcus said softly, his voice hoarse, his stomach cramped violently with hunger. He hadn't eaten in almost 48 hours now. But the dogs came first. He divided the remaining dog food between Duke and Lady, saving a small portion to try again with Scout. Duke ate eagerly this time, his strength clearly returning bit by bit. Lady managed more than she had the night before, which Marcus took as a positive sign. But Scout still refused everything except the few drops of water Marcus could coax into her mouth. "Okay," Marcus said, standing and stretching his stiff muscles. "Time to get help." The walk to the Graciette Avenue Youth Shelter took 40 minutes. Marcus moved through the familiar streets of Detroit's East Side, past boarded-up houses and corner stores protected by iron bars, past the places where he'd learned to be invisible over the past 3 weeks. The morning air was crisp and cold, the storm having left everything washed clean but freezing. The shelter was located in a renovated church building, its brick facade freshly painted in warm yellows and blues. A sign outside read, "New Horizons Youth Center, safe harbor for those who need it." Marcus stood across the street for a long moment, studying the building, watching people come and go through the main entrance. A social worker would mean questions. Questions would mean records. Records would mean the system finding him, pulling him back in, maybe even pressing charges for running away. But Scout's labored breathing echoed in his memory, and Duke's trusting eyes seemed to watch him even from blocks away. Marcus crossed the street. The interior was nothing like he'd expected. Instead of institutional grey walls and fluorescent lighting, the space was warm and welcoming. Comfortable couches filled a common area where several teenagers sat watching TV or doing homework. The smell of fresh coffee and something baking wafted from what must be a kitchen. Posters on the walls advertised GED programs, job training, counseling services. "Can I help you?" Marcus turned to find a woman in her mid-40s approaching him. She had kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, her curly hair pulled back in a loose ponytail. She wore jeans and a New Horizons hoodie, looking more like someone's aunt than any social worker Marcus had ever encountered. Yeah, maybe." Marcus shifted uncomfortably. "I heard you help people here." "That's what we do." The woman extended her hand. "I'm Linda Martinez, director of the center. What's your name?" "Marcus." He shook her hand briefly, then shoved his hands back in his pockets. "Marcus Williams." Linda's expression didn't change, but Marcus caught something flicker in her eyes. Recognition, maybe. She probably knew he was a runaway just from looking at him. The unwashed clothes, the defensive posture, the way he stood near the door as if ready to bolt at any moment. "It's nice to meet you, Marcus. Have you eaten breakfast?" The question caught him off guard. Not "where are your parents" or "why aren't you in school," but simply kindly, "Have you eaten?" "No, ma'am." "Well, let's fix that first. Everything's easier on a full stomach." Linda gestured toward the kitchen area. "Come on, then we can talk about what brought you here." The breakfast was simple but felt like a feast to Marcus. Scrambled eggs, toast, orange juice, and a banana. He tried to eat slowly, to maintain some dignity, but his body had other ideas. He devoured everything in minutes, barely tasting it in his desperation. Linda sat across from him, sipping coffee and not making a big deal of his obvious hunger. When he finally pushed back his plate, she asked gently, "Better?" "Yes, ma'am, thank you." "So, Marcus, what can we help you with today?" This was it, the moment of truth. Marcus took a deep breath and made a decision to trust, or at least to trust enough. "It's not for me," he began. "Well, I guess it is for me, but it's really about these dogs I found. 3 German shepherds. They're sick, really sick, and one of them might die if she doesn't get help soon. I was hoping maybe you'd know about a vet who could help, or a rescue group, or something." Linda listened without interrupting, as Marcus described finding the dogs, their condition, what he'd done to try to help them. He carefully left out details about where he was staying, how long he'd been on the streets, anything that might trigger a mandatory report. When he finished, Linda was quiet for a moment, studying him with an expression Marcus couldn't quite read. "That was very compassionate of you, Marcus," she finally said. "Taking care of animals when you're clearly dealing with your own challenges. Not many people would do that." Marcus shrugged uncomfortably. "They needed help." "Yes, they did. And so do you, I think." Linda held up a hand when Marcus started to protest. "I'm not going to force anything on you. You're here voluntarily, and you can leave whenever you want. But I need you to understand something. We don't work with the police unless there's an immediate safety concern. We don't automatically report runaways. Our job is to help young people, not to make their situations worse." "Really?" Marcus couldn't keep the skepticism out of his voice. "Really? We believe in meeting kids where they are, not where we think they should be." Linda pulled out her phone. "Now about those dogs. I know someone who might be able to help. Her name is Dr. Sarah Chen, and she runs a mobile veterinary clinic that serves low-income neighborhoods. She's also got connections with animal rescue organizations." Marcus felt hope surge in his chest. "You think she'd help? Let's find out." Linda dialed a number and put the phone to her ear. After a moment, she smiled. "Sarah? It's Linda Martinez from New Horizons. I've got a situation you're going to want to hear about." "Doctor." Sarah Chen arrived at the warehouse less than 2 hours later, her white van with "Mobile Vet Care Serving Detroit's Communities" painted on the side, navigating carefully through the debris-strewn street. Marcus had led her and Linda to the location reluctantly, still worried about revealing his temporary home, but his concern for the dogs outweighed his fears. "It's back here," Marcus said, guiding them through the damaged entrance. His voice echoed in the cavernous space, and he felt suddenly embarrassed by the squalor, the evidence of his desperate situation visible in every corner. If Dr. Chen or Linda noticed the makeshift bed in the corner, the scattered belongings that marked this as someone's living space, neither commented. Their focus was entirely on the 3 German shepherds huddled under their blankets near the old loading dock. Dr. Chen was younger than Marcus expected, maybe 30, with her long black hair pulled back in a practical braid. She moved with efficient grace, kneeling beside the dogs with her medical bag already open. "Hey there, beautiful ones," she murmured, her voice calm and professional. "Let's see what's going on." Duke growled softly when she approached, that same weak warning sound from the night before. But Marcus crouched beside him, placing a hand on his head. "It's okay, Duke. She's here to help." The dog looked at Marcus, seemed to consider, then settled back down with a resigned sigh. "Duke, huh?" Dr. Chen smiled. "Good, strong name. And these ladies?" "Lady and Scout," Marcus said, feeling foolish. They needed names. They're perfect names." Dr. Chen began her examination with Duke, her hands moving gently but thoroughly over his body. "Can you tell me everything you know about them? How you found them, their condition, anything?" Marcus recounted the story again while Dr. Chen worked, watching as she checked temperatures, listened to heartbeats, examined eyes and gums and paws. She took her time with each dog, speaking softly to them, never rushing despite the severity of their conditions. When she reached Scout, Dr. Chen's expression grew more serious. She spent extra time with the trembling female, checking her breathing, her temperature, the responsiveness of her eyes. "What's wrong with her?" Marcus asked, unable to keep the worry from his voice. "Severe pneumonia, I think, possibly complicated by malnutrition and dehydration." Dr. Chen sat back on her heels. "Marcus, I'm going to be honest with you. Scout is in critical condition. Without immediate treatment, IV fluids, antibiotics, possibly oxygen support, she might not survive the next 24 hours. Marcus felt his throat tighten. "Can you help her?" "I can, but not here. She needs to come back to my clinic where I have the right equipment." Dr. Chen looked at Lady. "And this one needs surgical care for that infected wound. It's deep, and the infection has spread into the tissue. She needs the wound cleaned properly, probably stitches, and a course of strong antibiotics." "And Duke?" Marcus asked. "Duke is in the best shape of the 3, believe it or not. Severely malnourished, dehydrated, some infected scratches and possible internal parasites, but with proper nutrition and care, he should recover fully." Dr. Chen closed her bag and looked directly at Marcus. "These dogs have been abused and neglected for a long time. Weeks, maybe months. Someone kept them in terrible conditions and then just abandoned them here to die." The anger in her voice was controlled but fierce. Marcus recognized it, the same anger he felt toward people who hurt those who couldn't defend themselves. "Can you take them?" Marcus asked quietly. "All 3 of them." I can take them, treat them, get them healthy again. Dr. Chen paused. The question is, what happens after? My clinic operates on donations and grants. I can provide emergency care, but long-term care for 3 large dogs is expensive. We'd need to find a rescue organization willing to take them, or individual adopters who can handle German shepherds with trauma histories. How much? Marcus heard himself ask. How much would it cost to keep them all together? Dr. Chen exchanged a glance with Linda. For initial emergency treatment, medication, food, follow-up care, we're probably looking at $2,000 to $3,000. Maybe more if there are complications. The number hit Marcus like a physical blow. $2,000 might as well be $2 million for someone with empty pockets and no prospects. But, Dr. Chen continued, I didn't say it was impossible. Linda and I have worked together before on cases like this. We've got connections in the community, people who care about helping animals and helping kids. We can fundraise, reach out to organizations, find creative solutions. Really? Marcus looked between them, afraid to believe it. Linda stepped forward, placing a gentle hand on Marcus's shoulder. Really? But Marcus, we need to talk about you too. You can't keep living here, especially not as winter comes. It's not safe, and it's not sustainable. I'm fine, Marcus said automatically, the old defensive walls going up. You're surviving, Linda corrected gently. That's not the same as being fine. These dogs need help, yes, but so do you. And there's no shame in that. Marcus watched as Dr. Chen began carefully preparing the dogs for transport, wrapping Scout in an additional blanket, creating a makeshift stretcher for Lady. Duke, despite his weakness, seemed to understand something important was happening. He stayed close to Marcus, occasionally pressing his nose against the boy's leg. What if I can't visit them? Marcus asked suddenly. After you take them, what if I lose track of them? Dr. Chen looked up from securing Lady on the stretcher. Then we make sure that doesn't happen. You found these dogs, Marcus. You saved their lives by getting help instead of giving up on them. As far as I'm concerned, that makes you family, and we don't lose track of family. Linda nodded in agreement. We're all in this together now. You, the dogs, us. We figure it out together. As they carefully loaded the 3 German shepherds into Dr. Chen's van, Marcus felt something shift inside him, that same feeling from the night before, but stronger now. He wasn't alone anymore. None of them were. Duke barked once from the van, looking back at Marcus, his tail wagging with more strength than before. I'll see you soon, boy, Marcus promised. I promise. Linda didn't push Marcus to stay at the New Horizons shelter that first night, and he was grateful for it. She seemed to understand that trust needed to be earned gradually, that pushing too hard would only drive him away. Instead, she gave him her cell phone number, a prepaid phone card so he could actually use his dying phone, and $20 for essentials. The offer stands whenever you're ready, she'd said. Hot shower, clean clothes, safe bed. No strings attached, no immediate reports. Just help, if you want it. Marcus had nodded, pocketed the money, and returned to the warehouse alone. But that night, sleeping in his corner without the dogs nearby, the space felt different, emptier, lonelier. The next morning, he used some of Linda's money to buy food at Mr. Patel's store, actual food for himself this time. The old man's face lit up when Marcus told him about Dr. Chen and the dogs getting help. You see, Mr. Patel said, bagging Marcus's purchases, you do good things come back to you. This is karma. Maybe, Marcus said, though he wasn't sure he believed in karma. In his experience, good things rarely came back around. But then his new phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Dr. Chen. Scout made it through the night. She's responding to treatment. Duke and Lady are doing well too. Come visit when you can. Address 4782 Mack Avenue. Marcus stared at the message, reading it 3 times to make sure it was real. Scout had made it. They all had made it. He was at the clinic within an hour. Dr. Chen's mobile vet care operated out of a converted storefront in a slightly better neighborhood than where Marcus had been staying. The large front window displayed information about low-cost services, vaccination clinics, and a community pet food bank. Inside, the waiting area was modest but clean, with mismatched chairs and a bulletin board covered in photos of animals the clinic had helped. "Marcus!" Dr. Chen emerged from the back, wearing scrubs decorated with cartoon dogs and cats. "Perfect timing. Come see your friends." She led him to a treatment area where 3 large kennels had been set up. Duke was in the first one, standing now, his tail wagging enthusiastically when he saw Marcus. The cloudiness in his eyes had already cleared considerably, and he barked. A real bark this time, full of life and energy. "Hey, Duke!" Marcus crouched by the kennel, and the dog pressed his nose through the bars to touch Marcus's hand. "You look so much better, boy." "Fluids, antibiotics, and quality food work wonders," Dr. Chen said. "He's already gained 3 pounds. I'd say with another week of treatment and care, he'll be close to full health." Lady was in the second kennel, lying down but alert. Her leg had been properly bandaged, and while she still looked thin and tired, there was a brightness in her eyes that hadn't been there before. She made a soft sound when she saw Marcus, her tail thumping against the kennel floor. "Lady's surgery went well," Dr. Chen explained. "The infection was worse than I initially thought. We had to remove some necrotic tissue, but she should make a full recovery. She'll need to stay quiet for a while, let that leg heal, but she's a fighter." But it was Scout who made Marcus's eyes burn with unexpected tears. The female German Shepherd was lying in her kennel with an IV line attached to her leg, but she was awake. More than awake. She was watching Marcus with clear, intelligent eyes, and when he approached, her tail gave a weak but definite wag. "Scout!" Marcus's voice cracked. "You made it, girl." "It was touch and go for a while," Dr. Chen said softly. "But she's tough. They all are. Just needed someone to give them a chance." She paused. "Someone like you." Marcus spent an hour at the clinic that day, sitting on the floor between the kennels, talking to the dogs, watching them respond to his voice. Duke was the most energetic, constantly seeking attention. Lady was gentle and sweet, content to just be near Marcus. Scout was quiet but observant, her eyes tracking his every movement as if memorizing him. "Dr. Chen," Marcus asked as he was preparing to leave, "have you found anyone to adopt them yet?" "Not yet, but I've reached out to several rescue organizations." Dr. Chen leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "German Shepherds aren't always easy to place, especially 3 with trauma histories. They'll need experienced owners, people who understand the breed and are willing to work through potential behavioral issues." "What if—" Marcus hesitated. "What if they don't find homes? What happens then?" "We'll find them homes," Dr. Chen said firmly. "It might take time, but we will. These are good dogs, Marcus. Someone will see that." Over the next few days, Marcus fell into a new routine. He'd spend his mornings looking for odd jobs, helping people carry groceries, cleaning up storefronts, anything that paid a few dollars. Then he'd visit the dogs at the clinic, spending hours with them, helping Dr. Chen with feeding and basic care. The work felt good, purposeful. On the 4th day, Dr. Chen approached him with a proposition. "I could use some help around here," she said. "Just basic stuff, cleaning kennels, organizing supplies, helping with the pet food bank. I can't pay much, but I can offer minimum wage for 20 hours a week. Interested?" Marcus stared at her. "A real job? A real job. You've already shown you're reliable and good with the animals, and frankly, I'm drowning in work here. I could use someone like you." "But I'm not even in school. I don't have a social security card or working papers or—" "Let me worry about the paperwork," Dr. Chen interrupted gently. "We work with Linda at New Horizons all the time. There are youth employment programs, ways to make this work legally, if you're interested." Marcus looked through the doorway to where Duke, Lady and Scout rested in their kennels. Duke's tail wagged when he spotted Marcus, as it always did now. "I'm interested," Marcus said. The job at Dr. Chen's clinic changed everything for Marcus, though not in the dramatic overnight way he'd seen in movies. Change came gradually, in small moments that accumulated over days and weeks. Linda helped him navigate the bureaucratic maze of getting proper documentation. It turned out that as a 14-year-old in foster care, even a runaway, Marcus still had a social security number on file. With Linda's advocacy and some creative paperwork through New Horizons Youth Employment Program, Dr. Chen was able to hire him legally. "This doesn't mean you're back in the system," Linda assured him during one of their many conversations. "It just means you're protected. You have rights as an employee, and it keeps Dr. Chen protected too." Marcus had reluctantly agreed to stay at the New Horizons shelter while he worked things out. His room was small but clean, with a real bed, a desk, and a window that looked out onto a small garden. It felt strange having walls around him that weren't concrete and crumbling, having a door that locked from the inside for privacy rather than safety. The other kids at the shelter had their own stories: runaways, kids aging out of foster care, teenagers escaping abuse. Nobody pried, nobody judged. It was an unspoken rule. You shared what you wanted, when you wanted, and until then, everyone respected your space. At the clinic, Marcus threw himself into the work with an intensity that surprised even him. He cleaned kennels with meticulous care, organized supplies with obsessive precision, and helped Dr. Chen with basic animal care tasks. But his real focus was always the 3 German shepherds. Duke recovered quickly, his strength returning day by day. Within 2 weeks, he was bouncing around his kennel with puppy-like energy that seemed incongruous with his size and the grey around his muzzle. Dr. Chen estimated he was about 7 years old, middle-aged for a German shepherd, but his spirit was ageless. "He's ready for adoption," Dr. Chen told Marcus one afternoon as they watched Duke play with a rubber toy. "Physically and emotionally, he's in great shape now." Marcus's heart sank even as he nodded. This was good news. This was the goal. But the thought of Duke going to someone else, of losing that connection. "What about Lady and Scout?" he asked, deflecting. "Lady's leg is healing well. Another week or 2, and she'll be ready too." Dr. Chen paused. "Scout is more complicated. Physically, she's recovered from the pneumonia, but emotionally, she's struggling. She's bonded strongly to you, Marcus. She gets anxious when you're not here." It was true. Scout had become Marcus's shadow whenever he was at the clinic. She'd press herself against the bars of her kennel when he was nearby, following his movements with intense focus. She'd eat better when he fed her, calm more quickly when he was the one handling her. "What does that mean for her adoption chances?" Marcus asked quietly. "It means we need to be careful about who we place her with. She needs someone patient, someone who understands trauma." Dr. Chen looked at him meaningfully. "Someone like you." The words hung in the air between them. Marcus wanted to laugh at the absurdity of it. Him, adopt a dog. He was still living in a youth shelter, working a part-time minimum wage job, trying to figure out if he'd even go back to school. How could he possibly take care of a German shepherd? But the image of Scout's trusting eyes wouldn't leave his mind. The breakthrough came on a cold December afternoon when a family visited the clinic to meet Duke. The Johnsons were a middle-aged couple with 2 teenage daughters, all of them wearing matching enthusiasm and nervous energy. They'd seen Duke's photo on the rescue website Dr. Chen had posted him on. "We've always wanted a German shepherd," Mrs. Johnson explained. "We had one when I was growing up. Best dog I've ever known. When we saw Duke's story about how this young man rescued him and 2 others, well, we just had to meet him." Marcus brought Duke out to the meeting area, his heart heavy, despite knowing this was a good thing. Duke, however, had no such reservations. He greeted the family with his usual enthusiasm, tail wagging, accepting pets and attention from all 4 Johnsons. "He's beautiful," Mr. Johnson said, kneeling to Duke's level. Duke immediately licked his face, making everyone laugh. The younger daughter, maybe 13, looked at Marcus. "Is it true you found him dying in a warehouse?" "Yeah," Marcus said. "Him and 2 others. They were in pretty bad shape." "That was really brave," she said seriously. "Not everyone would have helped." "They deserved help," Marcus replied simply. The Johnsons spent an hour with Duke, playing with him, asking questions about his care and temperament. Dr. Chen supervised, watching the interactions with her professional eye. When they finally left, promising to discuss it as a family and call with their decision, Marcus felt Duke press against his leg. "They seemed nice," Marcus said, more to himself than to the dog. That evening, as Marcus was finishing his chores, Dr. Chen called him into her office. "The Johnsons just phoned. They want to adopt Duke. They can pick him up this weekend." "That's great," Marcus said, meaning it even as his chest tightened. "There's something else." Dr. Chen pulled out a folder. "I've been working with a lawyer friend on something. Marcus, how would you feel about becoming Scout's official foster parent through New Horizons? It would be a formal arrangement. The shelter would handle expenses, vet care, food. You'd be responsible for her daily care and training. It's a program they've used before with therapeutic animals." Marcus stared at her. "Are you serious?" "Completely. Linda and I have been discussing it for weeks. Scout needs you, Marcus. And I think you need her too. You've both been abandoned, both survived impossible situations. Maybe you can heal together." For the first time in months, Marcus felt tears stream down his face. Not tears of sadness or frustration, but something else entirely. Hope. Real, solid, possible hope. "Yes," he whispered. "Yes, I want that." The day Duke left with the Johnson family was harder than Marcus expected. He'd prepared himself for it, told himself it was the right thing, the best outcome. But when Duke looked back at him from the Johnsons' car, tail wagging but eyes confused about why Marcus wasn't coming too, something broke open in Marcus's chest. "He'll have a good life with them," Dr. Chen said gently, standing beside Marcus as they watched the car drive away. "Room to run, kids to play with, people who will love him. You gave him that chance." "I know," Marcus managed. "And you still have Lady and Scout. Lady's adoption applications are coming in. I think we'll find her the perfect home soon. But Scout," Dr. Chen smiled, "Scout is yours now, officially." The paperwork had been finalized that morning. Marcus Williams, age 14, was now the official foster guardian of a German shepherd named Scout through a partnership between New Horizons Youth Center and Dr. Chen's clinic. The arrangement was unconventional, but it worked. Scout seemed to sense the change immediately. When Marcus brought her back to the New Horizons shelter that evening, her first time leaving the clinic since her rescue, she stayed glued to his side, her anxiety visible but manageable because he was there. The other kids at the shelter were fascinated by her. A few were nervous around such a large dog, but most wanted to meet her, pet her, hear her story. Scout tolerated the attention because Marcus was there, but her focus never wavered from him. "She's like your shadow," remarked Tommy, a 16-year-old who'd been at the shelter for 3 months. "That's actually kinda cool." That night, Scout slept on a dog bed next to Marcus's human bed, close enough that he could reach down and touch her if he needed to. Every time Marcus woke, which was often, old habits from the streets dying hard, Scout's eyes would open too, checking on him, making sure he was safe. They were taking care of each other. Over the following weeks, Marcus and Scout established routines. Morning walks before Marcus went to school, because yes, Linda had convinced him to re-enroll, starting with just half days to ease the transition. Then Marcus would go to the clinic after school to work and check on Lady, who was thriving and close to being adopted. Scout would come with him, spending time with her sister while Marcus worked. The transformation in both Marcus and Scout was remarkable. Scout gained weight, her coat becoming glossy and healthy. More importantly, her anxiety decreased day by day. She'd never be a carefree dog. Her past had marked her too deeply. But with Marcus, she was calm, confident, happy. And Marcus? He was going to class, doing homework, making friends, slowly and cautiously. The anger that had driven him to run away from his 4th foster home was still there, but it was changing shape, becoming something more like determination. He wasn't going to let his past define his future. In late January, almost 3 months after Marcus found the 3 dying dogs in that warehouse, Lady was adopted by a retired police officer named James Martinez, who had experience with working dogs. The goodbye was bittersweet, but Marcus and Scout visited Lady at her new home the following week. She was thriving, playing in a large backyard, sleeping on a comfortable bed in a warm house. "You did this," James told Marcus, as they watched Lady and Scout play together one last time before Marcus and Scout left. "You saved all 3 of them. That's something to be proud of, young man." That evening, back in his room at New Horizons, Marcus sat on the floor with Scout's head in his lap. She was looking up at him with those intelligent, trusting eyes, and Marcus realized something profound. He'd spent so much of his life feeling abandoned, feeling like he didn't matter to anyone. He'd convinced himself that people always left, that caring about anything was just setting yourself up for disappointment. But these dogs had taught him something different. Duke had taught him about resilience, about bouncing back even after the worst treatment. Lady had taught him about patience, about healing slowly but surely. And Scout had taught him about loyalty, about how connection could survive even the darkest circumstances. More than that, they taught him that he was capable of love, that he was worthy of it. "We're gonna be okay, girl," Marcus told Scout, scratching behind her ears. "Both of us. We're going to figure this out together." Scout's tail wagged, and she pressed closer to him, her warm weight grounding him in the moment. Marcus pulled out his phone, a slightly better one now that he had steady paychecks, and took a selfie with Scout. Then he opened social media for the first time in months and posted it with a caption. "3 months ago, I found 3 dying German shepherds in an abandoned warehouse. I was homeless, hungry, and had given up on people. But I couldn't give up on them. With help from amazing people like Dr. Sarah Chen and Linda Martinez at New Horizons, all 3 dogs survived. Duke and Lady found forever homes. Scout found me. Or maybe I found her. Either way, we're home now. All of us. If you're struggling, if you feel alone, there's help out there. There are people who care. Sometimes you just have to be brave enough to ask." Rescued is my favorite breed. New Horizons. Second chances. Within hours, the post had hundreds of shares. By morning, it had thousands. Local news stations reached out, wanting to tell the story. But Marcus wasn't interested in fame. He'd already gotten what he needed. He'd found his family. In the most unlikely place, in the most desperate circumstances, he'd found where he belonged. Scout barked softly, reminding him it was time for their evening walk. Marcus stood, clipped on her leash, and together they walked out into the Detroit evening. No longer lost, no longer alone, just a boy and his dog heading home. If you've made it this far, don't forget to give this video a like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss our next stories. Leave us a comment, letting us know where in the world you're watching from. Your support inspires us to keep creating content like this. Thank you for being here with us.